It's time to get some work done on Chunky. Got the transmission in, and I bolted the torque converter to the flex plate using self-locking nuts and some blue Loctite. I think I'm going to throw this dipstick in and the speedometer cable with these O-rings that I got from the transmission shop. Now one's bigger than the other. I'll figure out which one goes to which. Dipstick is going to go in and bracket to one of these transmission mounting bolts, and there is supposed to be a cover for down here. That's what you see in blue down at the bottom there. I have lost the bolts for that. I'll have to go looking. So that larger O-ring fits right in there. So with the transmission dipstick in place, it sort of looks like it's going to interfere with the doghouse, but it shouldn't, because this is the original transmission and the original dipstick. Now the oil dipstick, on the other hand, is from a 300. This is a 300. The 240 had a long dipstick, and this one is not going to work. It's going to interfere. It's all the way in the floorboard of the driver's side. So I have got to find a solution to that. The original dipstick for oil off of the 240 will not work on a 300. The 300 has a dipstick that comes out of the engine block. The 240 oil dipstick came out of the oil pan. So maybe a little modification would do. But we'll get to that later. All right, here's the speedometer cable. I'm going to clean up the end of this some. There is the O-ring. So I'm going to have to dig that out, put the new one in. And sadly, I don't know where the bolt is for this. It should be right there. Usually when I take a bolt out, I put it back where it went, but this transmission's been all over the world now. Hopefully it's not a hard to find thread or size. A little bit of a landmark with the van. Rear axle. Now I have the drive shaft in, and from the other video, it's been balanced. New U-joints put on it to the transmission and the engine. So every major component is in the vehicle now. It's time to put the starter on. And of course I can't find the bolts. I'm not sure if I just threw bolts out in the yard. I really think that as I'm taking something apart, I'm carefully bagging and labeling. And then when it gets time, a year later, to put it back together, you can't find anything. So I looked through my nuts and bolts. I found these two. They're 3/8. I'm looking at these intakes again. This is the old one and this is the new one. So this is an old style carburetor intake, but it has the fuel injection style exhaust manifolds. Now they don't fit together perfectly. You have to do a little bit of modification. If you saw my other video, you know about this. So right here, you have to grind that down quite a bit. And I marked a place right here. I'm going to grind the exhaust manifold. Right along there. So I think that'll make it fit. And this is not a concern. This is a hole for a dowel that is only on the fuel injected style heads. It's unnecessary on this engine. I really had to take a lot more material off than I thought I would. I had to flatten that nub all the way off. It was about that size. It's completely gone now. And then I had to turn to the intake, and as you can see here, notch that out quite a bit. But when it all goes together, you can see a little bit of daylight right there. So they won't be touching, and I won't have trouble tightening up either piece. I'm going to test fit the intake and exhaust. I put the gasket from the gasket kit on. Fits right up on this little pin here. Alright, I'm out here on another day just trying to get a few things done. These are the transmission cooler lines. I'm going to just clean these up with a little wire brush and install those right quick. Got those fluid lines attached. The electrical piece to the transmission. And my friend Randy and I found some oil filters that would fit, just a little bit shorter. And it does have anti-drain back, so that's good. The studs for this carburetor is too long, so I've got another one over here. These studs are much shorter for an older carburetor. So I tighten two nuts together, and I can run this stud back. That's more like it. Okay. Alright, I painted the little bolts there with some high temp paint. Once I got them snug, I took a breaker bar and a 32 millimeter to actually fit this. I'm going to go to the hardware store and find a filler plug for that. So once I get that hose up to here, then I'm going to need to go from here up over the valve cover and into there's supposed to be a filter here. This is the old fuel pump, and the line was routed up and over the valve cover here into a hose that would then go into that filter. Just needs to be bent slightly into place. Just right. So I'm just scavenging pieces off of this. This line here goes to the PCV valve on top of the valve cover, and it's going to work out just right. Going to paint it. I'm out here painting that fuel line that goes from the pump up to the carburetor, so it'll look nice. And I took this little piece off here, and it is completely gummed up with a dirt dauber's nest, maybe. That wasn't doing much. If it was running that way, I doubt it. I don't know. It's a 5/16 new fuel line that runs from the pump down to the fuel line that runs along the body. And while I was under here, see, there's the connection to the fuel line. It goes across through here, and I noticed there was a short rubber line there. I went ahead and replaced it. I got these clamps at Harbor Freight. They're made for fuel injection types of pressure, and we don't need that type of tightness, but I felt like they were higher quality than the worm gear type, so I bought these. Now, if we run all the way to the back, I've discovered a small issue. Okay, here's the fuel tank, and we've got a 3/8 size coming out of there, and a 5/16 at the body here. So I don't know, am I supposed to have like an adapter hose barb somewhere between those two? Have to find one. Thinking about this alternator now. So this 300 cubic inch engine did not come with this van, you know. Was happy to see that the bracket that came with it, it fits. I just have it mocked up slightly here. It does have this extra piece. What is that, for air conditioning or something, which I won't have. I was thinking about just cutting the excess bracketry off. And then it hit me, I still have the old 240 alternator and brackets. So I'm hoping that this simple bracket will fit on that newer style alternator. And it might be exactly the same alternator for all I know. I painted this bracket and it does look like it's going to work just right. Got the adjustability here. I've got a couple of crank pulleys and a couple of belt water pump pulleys. And so let's get those out and see if we can make everything line up. This is off the old 240, very simple single pulley. It will not fit. The center hole is too small for that. So over here we've got the one that came off of the 300. It's got extra unnecessary pulleys for this van. I don't have any air conditioning or power steering, but I'm going to have to use it anyway. And that's going to line up. There to there. At this point, I should also just use the crank pulley from the 300. This is from the 240. I grease that. Need to get that bolt off and crank it on. This is the original fan, and it does not have the correct bolt pattern for this. It's not even that great of a fan anyway. I'd like to get a clutch fan or a flex fan, some sort of, maybe a 6 or 7 blade fan. This is not going to work. So when I pick out a fan, I'm going to have to consider how far out it sticks out. So I'm going to have to measure. So the radiator is going to go across here. So I'm going to put a straight edge up and measure from the flange. I've only got about 3.5 inches to work with. I'm also going to look at the radiator to see if it sticks out a little bit before it, you know, goes across here. From where the bracket mounts to the fins of the radiator is about 3/4 of an inch. So that's 3.5 plus 3/4, 4.25 inches. I still have this fan that came off of this 300. It got damaged during transport to the house here, but this was a clutch fan, and just to do some experimentation, I'm gonna throw this on, not tighten it or anything, but just to see how far this sticks out. Alright, that completely misses. So technically I could put an original 1984 style clutch fan on this van and it clears. I dug through an old bin and found the original belt. It came off the 240 and the part number says it's a 41 inch. Now these are measured from the outside diameter. It would have been helpful if it was an inside diameter measurement, but yeah, it comes out to 41, and it is adjusted about as far out as you can get it. So I'm starting to wonder if I want to to order a 40-inch or maybe a 40.5 inch so that I have more adjustability. Now this more modern fan is about 1 inch bigger in diameter than the old style, but I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think it's going to get in the way of like the upper or lower radiator hose. I think I can route that away from it. So a new one of these fans is about $65. That doesn't even include the clutch. So I'm such a cheapskate, I almost want to kind of try to straighten that out and that, but not sure yet. Gonna think about it. Got a little Summit order here. In this box there was a new water temperature sensor, and this is not an internally regulated alternator, so the guy that's going to be wiring up this vehicle said might as well go to the simple one wire alternator. And so Summit's one wire GM style, I think this is what you call a GM style alternator. Let's take a look at it. Single. The new alternator fits perfectly fine. I'm going to put all these bolts in later. There's a terminal here that needs to maybe be wired up, so I don't want to install it permanent till that's done.